Thank you, colleagues. I will go straight to the presentation, but I'll make a few highlights in terms of trying to put to the fore the key issues which I'll be covering my presentation. One, I'll try to provide the background, which sets the scene in terms of what dynamics are we experiencing, especially based on sub-Saharan African cities, which are relevant to the subject matter. And then I'll try to capture some literature on the why MBS, what are the conceptions of MBS and why MBS, and thereafter I'll then also reflect upon the critique on MBS or what is not considered to be MBS and why MBS is criticized, and then thereafter I'll pull together some ideas which gives an impression of what we have observed from our project in Dar es Salaam, Albatross project, and another project is 3L project, which is Listen, Learn, and Leap, which is funded by the UK, not by EU. Essentially, the argument I'm trying to draw here is to argue that MBS is an important concept, is an important idea, is an important phenomena which can make a difference, especially in our communities in African cities. But there are also some caveats in that. But I'll come to that later. Most important one, next one. In terms of the background, Kenneth, please. Yeah, thank you. What we are trying to argue, we are saying that this is a very recent concept which emerged over the last 2 decades largely, and the argument that it is important because it can facilitate adaptation and mitigation of climate change matters. And it has been promoted largely by ICUN and the World Bank as a tool for sustainability and biodiversity conservation, as well as increasingly receiving attention, particularly in addressing and mitigating climate issues, especially social, economic, and environmental aspects. We are also arguing that action is being inspired, and it's considered by EU largely that is an action. NBS is an action that is inspired by, supported by, copied by, and powered by nature. These are the key features which tend to define what NBS is. It must be, in a way, inspired by, supported by, copied by, and powered by in terms of nature. And therefore, the link between NBS and nature is quite intricate. Increasing inclination of the NBS towards in sub-Saharan cities, it's been largely due to the endeavor to try to address solutions to climate change and reduce disaster risks and address poverty concerns which are increasing with the climate change aspects. And therefore, there's been this argument that for sub-Saharan cities, a lot of initiatives towards MBS are largely driven by these 3 issues. One, attempt to try to address climate change challenges. 2, to reduce the disaster risk related to it. And finally, or thirdly, to address the issue of poverty, which is actually escalating in all cities. Most important, MBS is being variably applied, often contextually in local communities, as a sustainable option to reconcile ecological imperatives, human activities, and needs with the conventional green, gray, and hybrid models. This is an important aspect to emphasize that there are a lot of overlap, and it's invariably being applied either standalone as MBS or in combination with the conventional green, gray, and hybrid models of interventions. Next, please. MBS simultaneously offer environmental, this has been, I've emphasized this, as well as social and economic benefits that help to build resilience, address critical needs of the communities, as a summary of what I've just presented there. MBS is an initiative from below, largely by people, what we have seen in Dar es Salaam and in many other cities. These are initiatives from below and centered on action oriented towards enhancing resilience. Therefore, there is also an element of resilience which should be underlined when we discuss about MBS. MBS provide multidimensional benefits and support biodiversity, livelihoods, as well as support everyday resilient building and endeavor of the local communities, especially low-income communities in our cities, those in the marginal areas and those who are cut off from the basic infrastructure service or main trunk infrastructure services. Primary features of MBS also are important to underline here. It has to be participatory, it has a participatory element, it is integrated in the system with the other interventions, co-designed, co-created, and co-managed. These are very important features which ought to be considered as you examine or conceptualize MBS. Next, please. There are critics of MBS. There's been a lot of discussion about what MBS is and what MBS is not. And one of them it is that MBS is considered an ambiguous concept. It is not, if it's not addressing, if it's not all green or blue, that is MBS. That's the main argument which has been here. That when you see anything green or blue, they cannot be considered MBS unless they are supporting ecosystem function. This is one of the arguments that categorization and conception of MBS ought to reflect on its function, its link with the ecosystem and biodiversity. Its link with nature is very critical, therefore. It's not only that it wants blue and green, then it can be an MBS. It's also important that it is harmonized with its implication, its impact on nature, especially ecosystem and biodiversity. Conceptually, MBS overlaps with several other concepts. This is another argument which has been said that MBS is ambiguous and it's not. It overlaps with many other concepts: ecological engineering, for instance, natural capital, ecosystem-based adaptation, or urban green infrastructure, ecosystem services. These are ideas which have tended to argue that this conception of MBS is ambiguous, is unclear because it can mean many things. Some of them I've mentioned here. Contemporary scholarship, however, tend to think these aspects. MBS is considered a complementary and mutually reinforcing, meaning that it is interlinked with all these concepts, and it has been taken as one of the major thinking that it cannot be dissociated from any of these concepts. It's part and parcel of these concepts. Next, please. I just want to give you an idea that how we went about to try to capture this presentation which I'm making here. One, we had some extensive literature review. Then we had informal settlements visits in riparian and the coastal area. We have two cases, one in Kigamboni and the other in Karakata in Dar es Salaam. And we then also, of course, assessing the economic challenges which have been, socio-economic challenges which have been addressed by communities in the vulnerable areas. Then extensive grassroots interactions, especially in terms of discussion and meetings. And then we had, of course, largely qualitative key informants interviews and FDGs. Very important aspect to mention is that we also had an extensive discussion with the initiators of the NBS activities in the settlements where we visited the two settlements, including the champions at the local community level. Next, please. The key results or key issues which we have observed, which tend to generate the ideas which are presented, is that one of the issues is that we have categories of MBS interventions, about 5 of them. One is that a creation and consolidation of natural areas. A lot of activities which are being implemented, we are trying to focus on trying to consolidate natural areas, green areas, forests, open spaces, beaches, gardens, and whatnot. They are trying to restore and also restoration of coral reef along the coast. Therefore, most of the activities which we were able to grasp and which we were able to look at and discuss with the communities are addressing these natural areas largely. And secondly, there are also activities which can be categorized as nature-based solutions, which are based on solid waste management. And this includes those which support nature to thrive, regenerate beyond environmental cleaning and public health. What we are trying to say is that most of these activities which we are able to examine, which we consider them nature-based, they are trying to recycle materials from waste. Some of them composting them and reusing them, therefore trying to sort them out and adapt them to sustainable management of waste. And this is one of the issues where we consider why we consider solid waste management as an NBS activity. Thirdly, conversion of fecal sludge waste to energy. This is a system which we have also observed in our case studies, where the water system or biogas is being generated from fecal sludge as an alternative source of energy. There are also briquette preparation of briquettes which are being used as charcoal. Then we have crab and sea moss farming along the coast, which is also supported, and including bee and mangrove restoration. These activities are all considered NBS in the context of the Salaam and in many other contexts because it's closely linked to the nature, and secondly, it is building upon very important concepts which we have already underlined: participatory and conservation aspects of biodiversity and ecosystem. Water management, there is another activity which is very popular in the area, which is trying to manage underground surface water. Rainwater harvesting is very common, and this is important because it's protecting the environment through managing the runoff from erosion, as well as works with nature by recycling water, reusing water scarcity, and enhancing resilience and sustainable methods of using water resources. And therefore, this is an important activity. Therefore, in the context of what we have done so far in Dar es Salaam, we have these 5 major areas where we think NBS is being underlined, variably depending on the activities being undertaken by the communities. Next, please. I just wanted to throw a few photographs to show you what is happening. This is a consolidation of natural environment in Karakata, and then we have a beekeeping which is combined with mangrove conservation. The idea of beekeeping here is to try to protect the encroachment of mangrove from people who are cutting, who are harvesting mangrove for building and fuel wood. And then we have campaigns to restore the mangrove in Kigamboni, which is ongoing, and then rainwater harvesting, which has been taking place in Jimpia, very close to Karakata. Next, please. And then conversion of the fecal sludge to energy, a DEWA system, which is a biodiversity system, and which is being used in the settlements. These are some of the examples which are illustrating the NBS activities which are ongoing in Dar es Salaam and the diversity of them, and why we still categorize and think they are considered important interventions from below. Next, please. In this slide, we are trying to pull together ideas which are emerging from there and trying to look at the type of NBS who is pioneering the NBS, society benefit which is being generated, and the ecosystem processes which are being deployed. And this is very important to capture so that it can be wrapped together as the NBS. For example, we are arguing that when you look at the creation or consolidation of the nature, we have communities and individuals who are involved in this activity, and this includes such as mangrove restoration, coral reef regeneration, to reduce risk, and sea and beach erosion to manage these ones. And we are saying that this is important for marine ecosystem and biodiversity. These are very critical aspects which have been achieved by these processes. If you look at the waste management, solid waste management, we are saying to support the nature to thrive, reduces cost of associated with climate change and water pollution, floods, and public health. Protect ecological values and integrity is a very important aspect again. Waste management, which is also another important area of concern, is an alternative energy source It's for biogas from fecal sludge, reducing pollution, and this aerobic process decomposition, fermentation of the organic matter is an important process part of it. These are some of the ideas which we tried together to show the implication of how these processes are interconnected with the nature. Thanks. Next, please. What are the takeaways from this discussion with you? We are saying that MBS typologies in the sub-Saharan African cities have evolved and represent community and household ingenuity and the knowledge to address specific unique urban challenges. And these are responses to widening marginalization, inequalities, deprivation of infrastructure services, and to climate change hazards, especially among low-income settlements. What we are trying to argue here is that we are saying these MBS are very reflective of the context within which they are evolving and within which communities are reflecting upon their own, are coming up with their own solutions. There are support from external sources in some cases. Hello? There are supports from other external agencies, NGOs, which are supporting some of these projects, but essentially they are emerging intervention from below. Secondly, effective urban planning system in terms of spatial planning in our cities and practices, including uneven distribution of risks and benefits associated with the organization, household and collective MBS initiative. What we are saying that MBS is still disjointed from urban planning, stream urban planning or land management system. As a result, decisions and activities which are being undertaken through MBS are not integrated or are not embedded in the planning system. And this we are underlined as one of the key challenges which MBS, these initiatives of MBS are facing in our cities. We are also arguing that the MBS initiatives outlined assert the socio-economic and the environmental benefits that communities draw from nature. And at the center of this lies the issues of livelihood. What we are observing, what we have seen in Assam is that you can hardly dissociate MBS from the livelihood demands of the local communities. There are priorities to address livelihood demands, and therefore they are deploying MBS options depending on how much it can address their concern for understandably neighbors, making the ends meet. MBS co-engagement with its variety of stakeholders, field interactions with the other stakeholders, offer rich social collaborative platform and process that explains why and how initiatives shape and engender the everyday resilience. What we are trying to say is that in the process of implementing, in the process of achieving their livelihood needs, communities are concurrently building resilience towards climate change.
Kombe, I think we lost the presenter. Okay, I think he was almost done.
No, not yet.
Okay. You are again back. Okay, continue, Prof.
Yeah. I've not seen my slide yet. Just I've not seen my slide. It's not appearing yet. I don't see
there.
I can't see the screen. Yeah, it's installed in that yet. Have you shared? Yeah, it's there.
Yeah, it's
Thank you. What we are saying is that the process of meeting the livelihood of the communities, of low-income communities in Dar es Salaam and elsewhere, is concurrently being undertaken with the spirit of trying to meet their basic needs. But at the same time, it's also building resilience to climate change. But what is most important is the co-learning process. We are all involved in learning from the communities and from the discussions which were held as a process of social learning. And this was very important for us in the process. Next, please. Next, please. Apart from community actors, stakeholders from municipal, central government, and other international levels are variably supporting MBS activities. Effective deployment of MBS in addressing resilience concerns ought to be inclusive. That's what we are trying to argue. Substantive engagement with at macro, meso, and macro level. Current MBS initiatives are uncoordinated, delinked from the mainstream urban planning system, which I've mentioned before, and MBS are variably covered by a range of policy instruments. For example, if you look at what has been presented here, the land policy is concerned, the environmental policy is part of it, the forest policy, the water policy. But the major observation is that these policy instruments are not coordinated or interlinked with the MBS mainstream ideas. Next, please. Conclusion. What we are saying is that MBS uncovered the MBS uncovered are all initiatives from below, not from top. They are contextually linked to the multifaceted challenges and benefits. Livelihoods and resilience lie at the center. One can hardly understand, conceptualize MBS in the context of what I've been discussing without acknowledging the multiple roles and benefits which it generates. At the center being livelihoods. Structural dilemma related to particularly weak urban governance, political economy in sub-Saharan African cities are real impediments that undermine MBS initiative. What I'm trying to argue is that the systems of power sharing, the city planning systems, which favors social groups, and how wealth is in land and other resources is distributed, offer understanding of where we are and what are the threats underlying the MBS. And it's important to take this into account as we think about MBS activities in Dar es Salaam and elsewhere. Unregulated informality, land parceling, grabbing, and urban expansion in peri-urban areas of the cities, sub-Saharan cities, and lack of appropriate distributive tools, standards, and regulations collude to constitute other threats to MBS. Inclusive partnership, therefore, especially consolidation of the substantive engagement of grassroots communities in MBS initiatives, is the key, most critical step towards to make cities sub-Saharan Africa resilient and sustainable to climate change. Thank you. I think I'm through.
Thank you, Prof. You only use additional 1 minute, but otherwise I can say it is successful. No, it's great. Thank you very much. It was really interesting. And I think I want to underline what you said about that you explained to us the meaning, the examples and what it makes of, but above all, that NBS as an action from below, I think it is something we should come back later on and reflect on it. Thank you very much again, Prof.